This year, my operating field would be my backyard. Fortunately, I live in a somewhat rural suburban area with lots of trees and open air. We have a large pond at the edge of our property, and we get lots of visitors from the woods and the water. Field day preparation at my station began with upgrading my emergency power supply to a new Bioenno Lithium Phosphate battery. It's a small, lightweight option for powering my rig all day, and it can travel with me easily, even on a plane in my carry-on luggage. It fully charges from any state of discharge in a couple of hours and has no memory limitations. I can recharge off the grid using my portable generator. Eventually I'm going to get a solar panel and recharge that way. Installing my emergency shelter in the backyard came next. It's been a while since the screen tent was used, but it will make the perfect field site to keep rain and sun off the equipment. I tried to choose a relatively level area of ground, and she went, eventually. The ARRL's annual field day happens every year on the last full weekend in June. Traditionally, it has always been an exciting and fun way for amateur radio operators to practice their emergency communication skills and prove their relevance to the community by demonstrating their skills to operate radio traffic off the grid. The activity simulates emergency conditions by operating their equipment off the power grid and with only portable shelter. In the event of a real emergency, it's always possible that a radio operator may be placed into a situation where a catastrophic event has caused the electrical grid, wireless communication, or even housing and transportation to be interrupted for a period of time. In such conditions, it may be critical to communicate with the outside world. Enter licensed ham radio operators who have practiced their communication skills without the need to have this infrastructure in place. On field day, we literally go out in a field and set up tents. We erect portable antenna towers and throw wire antennas up into trees. We use emergency power, emergency lighting, and subsist in the outdoors in our emergency shelters, exposed only to the forces of nature: rain, wind, bugs, and more bugs. We contact other radio operators around the country and exchange information, such as our location and operating configuration. To make it more exciting and fun, it takes the form of a contest to entice operators to make as many contacts as possible and even earn extra points by handling special radio traffic, using renewable power resources, using the events to educate the public about ham radio, and promoting the event and the hobby in the media. What was not traditional in 2020 was the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Large public gatherings were restricted this year as quarantines and social distancing were still being enforced. Any social interaction would require size restrictions, masks, and social distancing enforcement. Radio clubs that usually operate in large groups for the event could not gather to support each other in a public venue or even involve the public in any way on the site. Being an actual public emergency, the COVID-19 pandemic unintentionally created an opportunity to practice operation under true emergency conditions. Many quarantined at home and unable to replenish their supplies of toilet paper and hand sanitizer. The ARRL took note of this unique opportunity and modified some of the rules for the event to allow hams to operate from their homes, yet still contribute to their local club as a participator in the event. Modified rules prompted software developers to make last-minute updates to digital operating and logging software applications, such as WSJTX and N1MM. With more hams operating independently, the number of individual stations on the air would increase. This would prove to be yet another unique challenge to the field day operation for 2020. Now for some interior decorating. I'll need a table so I have a place for my equipment. I'll also need a chair and a place for guests to sit. I was anticipating having my wife and kids visit me from time to time, but I have to admit that one of the downsides to operating field day from home is the shortage of excitement, enthusiasm, and camaraderie that is shared with fellow hams at the club site. Finally, I was ready to operate. I connected my quarter wave end-fed wire antenna to my rig, plugged in the battery, powered up my laptop, and waited for 2 o'clock local time. The second it turned 2 o'clock, the radio silence turned into a cacophony of CW Morse code tones, calling out CQ. Up the dial, phone operators called CQ Field Day, and were immediately met with replies from hams around the country, eager to rack up contacts.
QSL to 1 Delta Michigan, please copy 3 Alpha, Western New York. 3 Alpha, Western New York. QSL? QSL to Charlie 4. 4 station with a Charlie maybe? November Charlie 4, Alpha Zulu. Alpha Zulu, that's it. Good copy. Thanks for 1 Delta Michigan, Mike India. Oh, 1 Delta North Carolina.
Kilo Delta 2, Romeo Echo Uniform.
Copy 1 Delta Louisiana, 7-3, QRZ Field Day, Kilo Mike takeoff. Kilo X-ray 4.
Alpha Charlie 3, Romeo Kilo, 1 Delta, Mike Delta Charlie.
X-ray 4, Mike India, 1 Echo, Silver Charlie.
It seemed like a good start to the event, and a good time to enjoy a cold adult beverage.
Charlie, 1 Echo, South Carolina.
I opened WSJTX and check the FT8 bands for activity. I started on 6 meters, and my first contact was a local ham from my own town, who was also eager to get an early start. There appeared to be no sporadic E to reflect more distant signals, so I migrated to the longer wavelengths to catch some DX. I made several contacts, but nothing farther than several hundred miles or so from my QTH. After the initial wave of excitement from the early starters, the chatter quieted down a little.
One Echo at Western New York. Thank you, QRZK4 RCA. Victor Zulu Delta again, please.
I switched over to FT4, but the band seemed unusually quiet, or at least no signals strong enough to be decoded. But I did hear some activity. I made some adjustments and kept listening. Apparently, WSJTX was having an issue decoding FT4, as confirmed by a number of other operators experiencing the same issue. Well, not to worry, because there's always plenty of other modes to utilize. Never put all your eggs in the same basket. I moved off the laptop and onto the radio for some phone contacts. There was a lot of noise, and it seemed that radio propagation was about as poor as I could have feared. I had been hearing all week that solar activity had declined from very poor to almost non-existent. I tried to answer some calls and got the attention of a few operators, but lost them before completing my contact.
Okay, I got 1 Delta Western New York from KN2B. Here's Lord 4 Radio Charlie Alpha 1 Echo Virginia, 1 Echo Virginia, QSL.
My short antenna was proving to be a challenge for those operating conditions, but an even bigger issue seemed to be the large number of individual stations on the air competing for those very same frequencies.
We're about to have our first visitors on field day.
My local club did ultimately decide to operate at a public location with a very small group of people and only wire antennas. Other individuals operating from home or alone at a remote location gathered as many contacts as conditions would allow to contribute to club scores.
Say CQ Field Day, CQ Field Day, this is Teddy.
There were other challenges as well. Thunderstorms developed in many areas, and flood watches were posted for heavy rain. Fortunately, in my area, a steady, heavy rain ended Saturday morning, and the sun came out to allow completion of the field day setup. This was good for me because the forecast had earlier called for heavy rain to move through just about starting time for the event, so the earlier timing of the rain was a happy surprise. But thunderstorms formed again by late afternoon and evening. Just before sunset, a thunderstorm rolled off the lake and presented a majestic view in the sunset. The thunderstorm also prompted recognition of the fact that amateur radio operators can be instrumental in passing along emergency weather information and reports. The Amateur Radio Emergency Service, ARRS organization, has local groups all around the country who are required to be trained as official weather spotters for the purpose of reporting severe weather conditions in their area and passing emergency traffic related to the severe weather across local nets and even to the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center. As the night grows darker, the 24-hour-long field event takes on an even more meaningful challenge. As with any real emergency, dealing with unexpected circumstances becomes more difficult in the darkness. The overnight aspect of the event gives us practice to operate in much less than ideal environments. Fading battery levels, dim lanterns, adjusting to working in the dark, mosquitoes, June bugs, and sometimes the ever-present rain keeps us on our toes. But at the same time, working outside in the quiet of only the night sounds made by frogs and insects gives us time to reflect on our abilities to conquer the challenges we're presented with, and our fortitude to successfully carry out our plans to mitigate those challenges.
Echo Whiskey, go ahead. Illinois, thank you. 89.
At the first light of morning, we start to see our accomplishments. We've pulled it off. Despite an active plague, lockdowns, quarantines, civil unrest, and enormous political division, we've managed to single-handedly operate a field day exercise from our own backyards that serves to unite ham radio operators across the nation in a friendly and productive exercise that will help us learn to serve the public. Sleepy and worn out, we are energized to push through for a few more hours as the radio gets busy again with the next shift of early risers participating in the contest. There's another chance to make that contact we missed yesterday or score some extra bonus points. Time to fill the coffee mug and keep going.
Yeah, really struggling these last few
As the morning wore on into midday, the bands that had been fairly quiet since the start of the contest now opened up and caught on fire. Now that many more frequencies were open, there were a lot more fish in the ocean to catch, and everyone was working the available stations as fast as possible to make up for a slow night. There were times I couldn't even keep up with the pileup of calls answering my own CQ. As my contacts finally began to add up to at least a less embarrassing total, I tried to move back and forth between phone and digital, but it was very clear that FT8 would be the quickest means to accumulate my contacts in the remaining few hours that were left in the contest. I thought about FT4 again and wondered if WSJT might have a fix for the decoding issue yet. Nope, there was nothing new on the site. I decided to try it one more time just in case the problem may have worked itself out, and lo and behold, it did start working. Well, at least up to the point of the rig control failure. Maybe I was too tired to troubleshoot properly, but I couldn't get transmitting again. I panicked and I worried about the lost time until I suddenly realized that there was only a few minutes left in the contest. Time's up, pencils down, and time to reflect on my progress. I think my biggest takeaway from Field Day 2020 will be the fact that I learned so much more about the rules and logistics of the event. Working the event independently forces you to understand how to plan, set up, operate, and report the results of your efforts. This is only my second field day ever. As a participant last year, my role was just to help raise antennas, make a few contacts on the GOTA station, and help with logging. I really had no concept of the rules or the points or how stations were classified and why. The rule changes precipitating from the pandemic required many people who were primarily helpers or observers in past years to now seriously look at the rules and learn how the event works in order to participate. So hopefully by working independently this year, a lot of newer hams like myself may have gained the equivalent of a couple of extra years worth of experience in understanding the importance and logistics of the ARRL Field Day operation. Field Day 2020 was certainly different from any other we've experienced so far, but it's the collective experience of many very different field days that makes us that much more confident and prepared for the time when our emergency radio services will be called upon to help the community in a time of need.